Hi everyone, and welcome to an episode of Flawless. My name is Micah and I'm your host. So before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit more about who I am and why I started this podcast. Basically, ever since I was 13 years old, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. And now, as a sophomore in high school, I find myself doing everything I can to learn more about the field of law. But growing up in a family without any lawyers, I've had to rely on things like books, websites, and movies. But at the end of the day, I've learned that talking to a real-life lawyer is something completely different. Hearing first-hand experiences from someone who's already walked the path is so essential in learning about the field that you want to pursue, so in my case, law. This realization has led me to create Flawless, Female Lawyer Lessons. Here in Flawless, I aim to inspire those just like me, individuals who aspire to be a lawyer. In Flawless, I also aim to amplify the voices of female lawyers who go through a male-dominated field. So, together, I hope we can learn more about the advice, the strengths, and the challenges that female lawyers face. And without further ado, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to another Flawless episode. So my name is Micah, and I'm here with Emmy. So today we're going to be learning a bit about how she became a lawyer. Emmy, do you want to introduce yourself a bit first?
Yeah, sure. I'm Emmy. I am a lawyer. I work in an international organisation in the legal team, and very happy to meet you and be of help to give you insights into how I did it.
Perfect. Okay. So kind of building onto that, let's start with our first question. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and where you started when you were in high school?
Right, so I grew up in the UK mostly. I was born in Nigeria and then my family relocated to the UK. So high school was what we would have called secondary school in the UK, in the south of the UK. So at that stage I was interested in the law. I actually figured that I wanted to do it quite early on. I think I was probably about 7 or 8 and I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And then I started watching and reading a lot of John Grisham novels and I thought that was what law was. It turns out not quite, but definitely entertaining. So at that stage, we have in the UK, well, when I was growing up anyway, you did secondary school and then you did 2 years of college, which is not the same as what the US system is called, but it's like the final 2 years where you do your A-levels. And I chose to study my law as one of my A-levels to get to know it a bit more. A lot of people don't do that, and you don't need to do that. But when I did that, so that's from sort of 16 to 18, I really was very interested in it and so chose to study it as an undergraduate degree.
Wow, so that was, you knew that you wanted to do law when you were 7 or 8?
Yeah. Wow, I didn't have a big imagination, did I?
I think it's funny because I think when I was 7 and 8, my relatives would also say, Micah, you should do law because you seem very argumentative.
Right.
So I think for me, I was interested in law ever since I was, I think, 12.
Yeah.
I've told this story on our last episode actually, but when I was 12, I was kind of being cyberbullied. So I was being blackmailed over Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't that bad, but instead of telling my parents, I chose a very unconventional path where I pretended to have a lawyer on retainer. And I searched up all these digital consent laws and started saying, if you do that, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to make my lawyer sue you. And my bully kind of backpedaled and I got a long apology. So that really sparked my interest in law. I was like, wow, that's how powerful the law is. And I think ever since I wanted to be a lawyer.
That's amazing. I mean, I cannot relate to that at all, having not grown up with the internet.
Exactly, yeah.
And yeah, that's a really interesting sort of and sad story as well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you were able to sort of find that avenue to sort of protect yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of building on that even more, what is it in your teenage years? Oh, you mentioned that it was the books.
The books, I think also similar to you, I was a chatterbox and I was argumentative and I was very analytical in my debates with my family. And I think a lot of people were like, I don't know about you, but I'm a middle child. Maybe I just needed to defend myself a bit more than others. So I think the books and just, I wasn't particularly I don't think I was particularly strong at maths or whatever. And I don't know, as a Nigerian family, there was no explicit you must be a professional, but as an immigrant and a Nigerian family, we kind of knew that we needed to go to university and become a professional and succeed in whatever that means. And I thought that was the most sort of the career that seemed most sort of connected to my natural talents and interests. I probably, if I didn't have that, would have become a dancer or something. I don't know. But I think because I had that structure of okay, you need to go through the academic course and stuff like that, I thought that makes more sense for me. Yeah.
So after your last 2 years, it was A-levels,
yes,
where you started studying law. What college did you go to?
I went to a sixth form college in Southampton called Taunton's College. It was, pretty straightforward school, nothing like the sort of schools that we have here. It was pretty, it was fine, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was the strongest academic space, but I had a really good close-knit group of friends who were always very studious and academic and things like that. So we ended up doing pretty well, and applied for universities in London primarily because I wanted to get into the big city. And so it was a good experience overall. I think in those at that time, I think it's similar now. You don't have to study anything particular. I think some of the US schools, I think there's pre-law and things like that. For university, you didn't have to study law to become a lawyer in the UK system, and you certainly didn't have to study law as an A-level. I think I did economics, law, English literature, and something else, another smaller, critical thinking or something. And I found that was fine to get offers at good universities and stuff. So yeah.
Did you take the IB system?
No, so it's just A-levels.
Oh, okay.
A-levels. So A-levels is the standard British system.
Yeah. Okay.
So you do GCSEs, which is general. You did GCSEs. Everyone now is going to be that's not the system anymore, because I know it's changed.
Yeah.
But at that time, you did GCSEs, which were what you studied, and you studied for and did exams for at 16. And then based on that, you then went on to do A-levels at 18.
I see.
And the schools, the universities would look at your predicted grades and an application to sort of decide whether or not they were going to give you admission to their universities. Sometimes you had to interview. Sometimes they would give you unconditional acceptance, and sometimes they would give you conditional. And so, I actually applied for a few. I got conditional acceptances, and I was 1% off my grade for the university I wanted to go to.
Oh my goodness.
In hindsight, I should have just appealed, and they would have found 1%, but I didn't at the time. So I went through a system called clearing, or clearance, I don't know what they call it now. And actually that was the best thing that happened, because I was going to go, I'm not sure if I should say the names, but I was going to go to a university which I didn't really, now I'm glad I didn't go to. And then I ended up going to SOAS, which I loved that experience. It was such an interesting way to study law, and I met some really amazing friends that I'm still connected to today. So I ended up going, rejecting the offers I had, and then going and asking this other university to give me a position, and unfortunately they did, so I went there.
So now that you're in law school, is that the point you entered law school? So
in the UK, you do your undergraduate degree, and that can pretty much be in anything. But I chose to do law, and so it's not what we would call law school. Law school would be, once you finish that, then you do a professional course in law, which is probably what we would refer to as law school.
I see.
And then, so this is just an undergraduate degree in law, and so you sort of had to do specific courses to make it a qualifying law degree, to make sure that you've got the prerequisite requirements to then go on to study law.
So when you did finish these prerequisites, then you went to law school at that point?
Then actually I took a year off.
Oh, okay.
I took a year off because in the UK, you sort of start studying and applying for summer placements and internships or whatever you call it, in order to then get a training contract. Again, the system has changed now, but you can even get a job 2 years in advance in that time. So I did a few of those. I didn't really get anywhere. I had a couple of interviews, and they didn't like my answer about John Grisham in one of the law firms. So when I graduated from university, I took a year off, and I went and did more sort of work experience. I went home to my parents, and I did some shadowing of barristers. At that stage, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be a solicitor or a barrister. So in the UK, you have two types of legal professions, and barristers have sort of a right of audience in front of the courts. They're the actual litigators, and they're specialists. And solicitors can have that if they're litigious solicitors, but they're primarily not. They don't go in front of a court. They don't argue.
So doing the background work.
Yeah, they do pretty much everything else. So like what I became a solicitor, and I was in the finance area and the corporate area. So you basically can advise in relation to everything. You just don't go in front of the judge, and you don't go into a litigious situation. So I wasn't sure which one I wanted to do at the time. I was actually thinking I was going to become a barrister. So I shadowed some barristers, did some work experience in Southampton, and then just did some other work. And then I applied for a master's.
Okay.
Because frankly, I didn't know what else to do, and I got in. So that's when I went to LSE for a year to do my master's at LLM. So that's after a year I went to LSE, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to get a job now. And I got a bit more sort of focused and serious. And so I still did a variety of work experience while I was studying. So I also did some work in Parliament, because I was considering sort of like a legal, so politically annexed career sort of thing. So I spent 6 months while I was working, shadowing and supporting an MP. And then I did a couple more of those training contracts, sort of summer placement things, and then by the end of the year, I had received a couple of offers, and I took one in a city law firm in the UK, in London.
Going back a little bit, what made you choose to be a solicitor and not a barrister?
Good question. I think it was a variety of things. I wanted to be financially independent, and the solicitor track was much more sort of secure in that way. They paid for the further studies that you needed to do, and you got a good salary, and it was just a bit of a more secure and sort of a safer package. But the barrister's route is a lot more sort of precarious, I guess. You're pretty much self-employed. The pay is not great at the beginning, and it's extremely competitive to get what they called pupillage at the time, where you were able to join a barrister's firm and then work as an independent lawyer. Also, I didn't really like litigation. As it turned out, I don't, and I still feel the same way today. I've done bits and bobs, and I sort of think I don't like tearing situations down. In the UK, it's what they call an adversarial approach. I think in like European countries they have a inquisitorial approach, where everyone's trying to figure out and come up with what actually happens. Whereas obviously, I think the US is the same. The sort of common law system is more like, let's just all rip each other apart, essentially. And I find I don't actually like arguing to win a point at work. I like trying to bring us together. So I end up doing is negotiating contracts, right? And so I much more prefer that sort of everybody ultimately wants the same outcome sort of approach. It's a personality thing. There's nothing wrong with either way. It just, in the end, I did work with some of the barristers, and I saw what they were doing, I did some family law, shadowing, criminal, some commercial stuff, and I think it just wasn't me in the end. So as a whole, there was some practical influences. Just I needed money. I wanted to be financially independent, and get out of debt from the university fees and university loans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To I think it was more of my preference to just not be a litigator.
Interesting. That's really interesting, because I think me personally, I don't know if like I'm quite young, so that's why I'm doing this podcast to talk to more lawyers, but I think personality wise, I like trying to like win to prove a point. Like for example, if I get in an argument with my friends, people say my arguments are so structured, like I just think that I would be more the litigation side than behind the scenes. Like I kind of like tearing people apart, if you know what I mean.
No, I mean, one thing I would say is that I still have to do exactly what you've just said. But the difference is if I'm looking at a contract, I'm trying to prove why that position, that provision is the correct way to draft it, rather than, and it is protecting my own client's interest. So you are trying to prove a point, and you're still structured, and you're still trying to like, but the difference is, and it's just a personality thing, is I like it at the end when we've come to an agreement. Do you know what I mean? We've agreed, you've taken some, I've taken some, we've compromised, and then we've come to an agreement, and then something gets built, or some project gets done, right? Whereas when I've worked, and I'll tell you about it a bit later, on the litigation, I just felt sad afterwards. Because I know that like it's not, in my mind I'm like, I think it's my personality as well. It's like I realize that there's nuance in everything, and not everybody's right or wrong. So I don't necessarily even agree with what I was putting forward. It's just for the sake of the winning, and that's just in the end, I'm glad I got to do a bit of both, and say, okay, I'm good where I am actually.
I think at the end of the day that's really a strength, to know that you want to just be the compromiser and like to make everyone happy, than rather one person wins and one person is super sad.
I just don't think, I think it's not even that. I think the reality is no one ever wins. That's the reality. So I want to, anyway, it's there's merit and value in both sides. And it's just completely a personality preference thing. So
So after law school, when I know that you tried so many different types of law, so when did you decide that you want to specialize in negotiation and contract law?
Good question. I didn't really decide as much as, so the way it works in the UK, once I finished my master's, I went to the sort of LPC, which is the law school, the legal practice course, and that was done and sponsored by the firm I had gained employment with. And then once you finish that, you start your training contract, which is a 2-year process, at the end of which you become a qualified lawyer, solicitor. And during that process, you have to do at least 4 6-month placements in different types of the firms, the different practices of the firm. So I think I did, I can't remember, I think I did corporate law, I did competition law, which is antitrust, I did asset finance, and gosh, do I remember the last one? Oh my goodness, what did I do? And I can't remember the last one. Anyway, but you have to do something litigation related as well. And I think I didn't really decide that, because my career has changed lots and lots and lots actually. So when I qualified at the end of my training contract, it was the global economic crisis. I'm not sure how old you were, but at that stage, no one was getting jobs. It was a real meltdown of the global financial system. And working in finance, that was not the best place to be. So I didn't get a job. So normally the law firm will say, you come and join our firm officially, full-time, long-term, and you can work in XYZ team one of the 4 teams that you've worked with. And so I didn't get offered a place. Very few of us did. And so after that, I just was scrambling around, figuring out what I was going to do next. And I was very lucky to find a sort of senior man in the firm who had actually been part of setting it up a long time ago. And he sort of became a bit of a mentor and really supported me to just figure out my next steps. And this is something that's really important to do as a junior person, is to find people who are interested in sponsoring you and supporting and mentoring you, because he's always been someone I will always think about in terms of me not losing heart and hope.
Yeah.
And so because of his support and, obviously I worked really hard, I actually managed to get a job straight away afterwards elsewhere, and I went in-house. And in-house, I was doing competition law. So I wasn't actually started. I didn't start this way. I didn't start off as doing contracts. I really enjoyed competition law because it was very intellectual. It was very interesting. It was challenging, and there was a lot of diversity involved in it as well, because we had the side of mergers and dealing with mergers, but also then dealing with the economic structures of monopolies, oligopolies, and all this kind of stuff. So it's quite interesting. And so I ended up going in-house to a big company to work as a lawyer there for a little bit. And it was a short-term sort of situation, but I grew so much in that period because I was able to sort of pivot. And it didn't work out for me in that law firm. I didn't particularly enjoy my time at the firm either. And I found my way to being in-house, and I really liked in-house work. I thought you got a specific type of lawyer in there who was interested in, it was a more commercial minded lawyer, and I learned a lot from them. And then during that period, and it was only a short-term sort of gig, so I kept looking for more stuff, and then I ended up going into the UN afterwards because I found a place in sort of the Conference for Trade and Development, which is and there was a competition sort of team there, so I went and I worked in-house for them for a year, and again, just broadened my horizons so much because I saw different ways you could practice law. And the brilliant thing about that was the travel, which is the big thing I love about being a lawyer. I'm not sure everyone else has this experience, but I love how I could travel as an English lawyer because I was able to move from different jurisdictions, but there was always a need for English lawyers in certain contexts. So I did a stint in Brussels when I was doing my training contract, when I was doing the competition thing. And then I moved to Geneva to work in this organisation at the UN. And so that was sort of my sort of wiggly sort of adaptation to a difficult economic situation.
I just had a question though, because I've never heard about competition law. So can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, if I can remember anything about it. So competition, in the US they call it antitrust.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's basically it's the government making sure that companies don't have too much influence in a way that minimizes competition and because the fundamental idea is, if in a capitalist market-driven society or a market-driven economy, you don't want one company to be dominant over everybody else, because you're trying to focus on the consumer.
Yeah.
And if one company, this is kind of a basic situation, but if one company is dominant, then it means that they can control how much everything costs. They can provide not good services to the consumer, and ultimately, what you want in a market-driven economy is multiple players, so that it drives off innovation, it drives up competition, and it brings down prices for the consumer and increases the quality of the whatever services and products are being provided, right? So that's sort of why there's regulation around consolidation of companies, basically, to make sure that they don't get too big, so that has an adverse impact. And then there's other things relating to basically behaviors of companies to make sure that they're not colluding, they're not just cheating, basically.
It's funny because I actually take AP US history, and
Okay.
In our unit we're actually talking about this exactly, like the monopolization of companies in the 1850s and onwards. So yeah, that's really great to hear how you went from antitrust to the UN. So
Yeah, so so the department I was working was supporting developing countries to develop antitrust laws and practices.
Yeah.
Because there's an argument that drives up development in a country. So it reduces corruption and increases competition, and reduces barriers for companies to enter into a space to be able to provide goods and services to consumers. So it's really interesting. It's a very long time ago that I've even thought about this or talked about it. So I'm sure I'm saying some things incorrectly, but
it's okay.
overall, that's basically what that is. And that's the thing about law, is that if there's anything in the world, there's a law about it. So you can literally, there are so many options, and I'm sure by the time you're practicing, there'll be whole new spaces as well. Like this whole space of social media, AI, exactly. It's going to be regulated. It's going to be litigated about. So that's what I found was interesting, because my career has traversed lots of different spaces. I haven't really stuck to one area.
But as like a junior lawyer, what was the most difficult and maybe the best thing that happened to you, or was like being a junior? Because I know when I talk to a lot of lawyers, they tell me like their first few years of law was very difficult. They had to do such long hours. So how was it for you?
Yeah, so as a trainee, I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was... I feel like those law firms, I'm sure they've changed a lot now, could be quite toxic environments for working as a young person. So I struggled with that. I think it just depends. You can be really lucky and you can be unlucky. I guess I was a bit unlucky with some of the mentors I had at my law firm, or my supervisors. They were really unsupportive in many ways. So that was tough at the beginning, because, as I went into that space not having had a lot of corporate working sort of experience, so that was the time I was going to learn and be supported to know how to conduct myself and just to get that sort of professional experience. And I felt that was a bit tough. You did have to work long hours, but I think leaving. Not getting that position was probably the hardest thing, but I think also, as I said before, the best thing. Yeah. Because I was able to see a different type of legal practice and legal career. And I actually ended up going back to private practice. So I really didn't like it as a trainee. Yeah. After the UN, I chose to go back into private practice. I moved to Paris and worked in a law firm there. That's when I went to doing contracts law, asset finance, where we were helping finance planes and ships. So it's another pivot. But at that point, I learned a lot. After my UN experience, going back into private practice, because I wanted to get the training. And even though I worked really long hours and I didn't love it, I think that's when my skills were most honed. And I had an amazing boss who was a bit nuts because she worked so hard, but she was a really good mentor, and she really cared about investing in junior people and teaching them. And it was a smaller team. The headquarters were in London, but we had a sort of satellite office in Paris. And so I think that was the best sort of training for me, and I would advise and recommend that you get that sort of people who are really specialist and expert at what they're doing, having exposure to that sort of teaching and learning from them was really, really helpful. but it wasn't for me long term. I was never going to be a law firm partner. I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid on it. I didn't think it was the sort of lifestyle I wanted at all. So I think after 5 years in private practice, after I think I did 5 or 6 years, I went back in-house. Yeah.
What was it like? So I know that you were talking about when you were just a trainee, you were in a toxic environment. Do you think that, or what was your experience being a woman in a kind of male-dominated industry? Because I know back then, I'm pretty sure it was even more male-dominated than it is now. Do you think like that played a big part into why it was toxic?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there was. I can only speak about my experience. I don't think that every single woman had. Yes. I don't know what they experienced. I think it would have played a part. I think my race played a big part, to be honest, more than that. I think in those days, probably less so now, it was not as diverse. And even if it was diverse, it was a funny diverse where everybody came from a very wealthy background anyway. So those things would have impacted on sort of progression and experience and how, how you were treated, definitely. I definitely, I think it's difficult to know exactly why. I don't think I was treated well. But I know that there were sort of people who were liked and not liked, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And I was definitely in the not liked category.
Oh no.
Particularly. But I also would say I speak to people from all sorts of backgrounds, and that environment was not great for them. Do you know what I mean? At the time, it's a very the culture was, how long can you work and how many hours do you do? And it was very sort of about, billable hours. It was sort of all, there wasn't balance basically.
Yeah.
And what I found, not as a trainee, but later on, was this sort of understanding that the women tended to come in equal numbers as the men. And the men progressed and the women went away and had kids, and then, that was it for their careers. Yeah. That was sort of the most pattern, the biggest sort of consistent pattern. And then the woman, including the woman that I said was a great boss and supervisor, she's done great. She's now the managing partner of her law firm. She's done amazingly well. But she also took on that model of being the breadwinner, and then her husband didn't work and sort of did everything else. Yeah. So it was, everyone had to be in a very sort of masculine, sort of traditionalist structure, energy, where you could just be at work all the time and be on all the time in order to succeed in those environments.
I think that's really interesting because it really shows how, you either choose to start a family or you just choose to work, and there's no I ground.
In a law firm in those days, yes. I actually had the best conversation. I don't know if I wasn't very subtle about being unhappy. This is when I went back into private practice. I moved from Paris to London. Yeah. And I knew I wasn't going to stay long in the law firm. But at one point, when someone must have said Emmy wasn't happy, or I don't know what, and a very senior man called me into his office as a senior partner, and he said, "So, where do you see your life going? Do you want a family?" And I was like, "Yeah, at some point." I think I was just pushing 30 at the time, and he was like, "I met my wife in this firm. We started around the same time, but we made a decision. I would look after the finances and she would look after the kids, and she left the law firm." Do you know what I mean? So he was very explicit, and he sort of made it very clear that this is not the environment for you if you want to have a family. Done. So
very straightforward.
Very straightforward. And it was, I always remember that conversation. I was never looking to stay long term in that kind of environment. And there was one lady who had a child whose husband wasn't in that model of working from home sort of thing, or being a homemaker. She was I mean, just to have at that time working a couple of days from home, very difficult for her to achieve that. And she was capped. It was clear that she wasn't going to get promoted and stuff like that. I don't think it's the same today, and I don't think it will be the same going forward, especially post-COVID. I think there's a lot more flexibility, and people are understanding that you can have really productive and engaged employees without having to have that sort of at your desk every day, 24 hours thing.
That's great. Yeah, that's great to know. I think like I've had this conversation with my parents as well. Like sometimes they ask me, law is very, you have to love your job. You're going to be married to your job. It's going to be hard to have kids while working super long hours. But I agree. I think now with more and more technological advancements, I think it'll be easier for us. But it's kind of interesting to hear back then how it was you're either going to be at home or you're going to be at work. There's no middle ground.
I mean, this is a very specific way of practicing law in private practice. I'm still doing it, and I have my kids, I have a life, and I'm able to practice law. So it also depends on how you do it and where you do it.
But maybe on a different note, I was really interested to hear that you were in the UN. So how was that experience? Because that's pretty impressive.
Thank you. It was interesting. I really enjoyed it. I was very young. Well, not that young. I was younger. And I think for me it was a really eye-opening experience because, again, it was this sort of, there are different ways to do this and I can enjoy my work, and I saw people doing interesting work, traveling the world. I love traveling and experiencing different cultures and still, practicing law, and I really enjoyed Geneva. I thought it was a really beautiful place. I met lots of nice friends. I'm still friends with them today. And the work was really interesting. I think that the biggest challenge with it was it was really hard to get a permanent job there. People were always scrambling for the next contract and things like that. So that's why I chose not to stay longer. I could have pushed, but I wanted to get the private practice experience under my belt because I thought that was more long term. It was going to be more valuable if I wanted to be able to navigate public and private worlds in terms of the law. It was a really great experience. I'm really grateful for it because after the disappointment of not getting a qualifying position, it was a real comeback, if you see, comeback moment and doing something even more interesting. I would never have swapped that experience for being in a private practice law firm. So,
What was the most interesting thing that you did there? Most memorable to you?
I have, looking at all your setup here, I did not have any technological sort of experience, but I ended up creating this sort of video. We set up a conference for all the member states, and so and I did this video about, it was like a big anniversary, so I created the video for it, and then I also went to the OECD and represented us and spoke about a paper that I wrote. So I wrote a few papers and stuff. It was really cool.
So I was really on the world stage in front of all the representatives. Wow. How did that feel?
Felt, do you know what? It felt, after that, it felt like it was really encouraging because I felt I could do stuff that I could rise up to a challenge, right? And I felt more confident because I thought my insecurities, my professional insecurities and my imposter syndrome went right down because I just thought at the end of the day, if you just try really hard and do what you think is your best and ask questions where you think you need to ask questions and ask for help, you'll get it done. And it doesn't really matter what level you're at, it's the same. It was a really important moment for me in terms of my confidence as a professional. And as I said, because I had such a negative experience in private practice, it sort of made me a little bit more objective and realized how subjective people's views were. and how maybe they're not always informed by meritocracy.
Yeah.
And again, I had a lovely boss, a really amazing boss at the UN.
That's
and
great.
he was really, he was always sort of very complimentary, and he gave me a lot of confidence to say I'm doing a good job. So it was very good for my confidence overall.
I feel like that's really important to have that experience when you're at a younger age, because it's kind of like when my sister used to be super scared of roller coasters, and recently we went on the most terrifying roller coaster you could ever think of, and then my dad was like, Kayla, Laura, now that you did that, you can do any roller coaster you want, because you already did the scariest one. There's nothing scarier than that. Which
was the scariest one?
We went to Universal Studios Osaka.
Oh, wow.
And it was this roller coaster called the Flying Dinosaur, where you were, normally you sit up in roller coasters, you were kind of hovering like that. It would go so fast, loop-de-loop, backwards loop-de-loop, you'd be falling head first. It was insane. But
so she did it.
My 8-year-old sister did it. And my dad was like, Laura, now that you did that, you can do any roller coaster you want because you've done the scariest one. And that's kind of how you talk to all of the UN delegates, so now you can talk to anyone.
Exactly. It's also 99% of it is in your mind, isn't it? Yeah. Because everybody's got the same insecurities, and it's about overcoming that and just realizing everyone's just a person.
Yeah.
And tasks are just tasks. Just have to approach them diligently. But yeah, it was a good re-leveler, I guess, after a bit of a difficult time.
That's great. So we've talked a little bit about how after that you went back to private practice. You went from Germany. Oh no, you went from Paris, Geneva,
Switzerland to France,
Paris, and then back to London.
Yes.
And then is that when you came to the Philippines?
So no.
Oh, more traveling. I think that's great though. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, after I left private practice, I spent a little bit of time out of work. Well, not really, but I moved. I got married. I moved to Uganda. In East Africa for a bit, and then I came back, and I went and worked in the British government. Oh. And that was one of my best jobs, I have to say. It was a brilliant job.
Tell me a bit about that.
So I was working at something called an export credit agency, and the purpose of an export credit agency is to increase the country's exports by supporting projects abroad financially, as long as there's a UK or that country's sort of services and products are being used in that product in that project abroad. So it's kind of a niche space, but it was just fascinating, and I was working in the heart of the British government, in the Treasury building, so you had all these politicians walking around everywhere, and so this was so I was doing contracts, but I was also working on government policy, and I was working, and this is when I did this litigation. I supported on a litigation against the British government, which was like the first climate change related litigation, and that was fascinating. Never want to be a litigator, but that was really fascinating. So I did so many interesting projects around the world. I got to travel for work. I met some really amazing people. It's a really, really good, interesting job. And also it was flexible, so I could have children. I could work from home already, even pre-pandemic times.
Wow.
A couple of days a week. I had maternity leave for a year for each child, and it was just a really interesting, brilliant opportunity. You don't get paid private practice salaries by any stretch of the imagination, but the work was so interesting, and I think today it's one of my favorite experiences.
That's like the perfect job.
The money was bad, but that was it.
Yeah,
otherwise
you gotta be at home and you gotta do what you loved. I think that's pretty good.
It was great. Yeah, that was a brilliant balance, and I'm really thankful for having that opportunity. So
from there, is that when you did you more traveling?
No, I didn't travel. So that was, I stayed in London for that. Okay. That was in London.
That's for a couple of years.
No, that was for 5 years as well.
Yeah.
I can't remember. 6 years. And then I left and did a couple of years working in an asset manager, an American asset manager, which was completely different again, working in relation to investment funds, basically.
Thinking about kind of my knowledge about the differences in American and British law, how is it, having a British law background going into an American?
Well, it was the same because I was as an English lawyer, I can only practice English law. So it was an American firm, but they were based in the UK.
Yeah,
they had an office in London and in Oxfordshire, and I was in the Oxfordshire office at the time. I did have to sort of interact with the Americans a lot. It's similar because obviously it's common law. Well, depending on where you are in the US, to be fair. The New York side is similar. And that was just different because I didn't know anything about asset management when I went this completely new space. But I was interested in that because I was interested in sort of the climate change aspect of the role. And there was a lot of European regulation coming in that was going to impact the firm. And so I was supporting on that in terms of the environmental, social and governance work, regulation that was coming in, and working on some climate change related projects.
So at this point, this is already negotiation law?
All of it has been. So since Paris,
since
it was
Paris.
Always negotiation.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. This one, I was helping the firm negotiate investment management agreements. So when a pension fund or Ministry of Finance of a government abroad or wherever wanted to give money to the firm to manage it for them and invest for them, I would negotiate the terms of how those funds would be managed.
Amazing. And from there,
then I came to the Philippines.
Finally.
Yes. It's a long road. But yeah, so I came to the Philippines to work for an international organization, doing similar stuff actually. When money comes in from third parties, I support where I work to negotiate the terms of which we will manage that money for them.
Wow.
And also in relation to projects related to essentially poverty reduction, climate change mitigation, adaptation.
So now that we've kind of finished the timeline of your career, but it's a great but long timeline. I think it's really cool that you've gotten to go to so many different places and try out so many things, and how kind of when you're talking about what happened at the start when you didn't get that job, and now look how far you've come.
Yeah.
So now we've kind of finished covering where you've been. What's the best and worst thing about practicing law in your opinion?
The best thing for me personally, I love the financial and the independence it gives me, the sort of security it gives me, because for me it's very important to sort of sustain myself, sustain my family, coupled with the way I've done it, ability to travel and live in different places and experience different things. And I really love working in-house because I think it gives you the space to be different, to just learn different businesses and different practices within a way an organization works. So I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to practice law for that reason, because I've learned so much about myself, about just navigating people, negotiating with people, and living in different countries. The difficult thing about working in law, I think it's as a quite a creative person, there's limited opportunity for being quite creative. You're working within the confines of rules and laws and regulations, right? So within the workspace, it can be quite difficult to be creative.
Yeah,
you can do it, but it's not the same as in other industries necessarily, or other sort of professions and career paths. Sometimes the people can be difficult. Sometimes that in the past has been a problem. Like, as I mentioned at the beginning of my career, depending on where you're working, it can attract a specific type of person that can be, if they're all together, extremely competitive, extremely sort of like cutthroat.
Yeah.
So so that was a bit challenging, especially at first. And fortunately, I've sort of learned to put up boundaries.
Yeah.
And like now, I have to surround myself with really lovely people. I think also it's a difficult job. Like,
Yeah, it is.
It's not an easy thing to do, and I think going back to what's challenging, I don't find it hard anymore. I guess, but when other people talk to me about my life, I think they think my life's pretty intense. I guess. It's not an easy job to do, but I really enjoy a challenge. I like solving problems. So if your personality is something as such, like, people in my job, people always come to me with a problem.
Yeah.
And often the clients, internal or external, they don't want to do stuff. And they often ask you to do stuff that they should probably be doing. So you're constantly solving their problems and trying to fix stuff for people. So if your personality is such that you find that challenging, then maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. So kind of on that note, have you ever had a moment where you felt so overwhelmed? And can you kind of describe that experience? Because I know, like you said, law can be very challenging, and I know there will be moments where if I do go into law, I probably will also feel overwhelmed. So what kind of was your moment where you felt really overwhelmed by something?
Oh my gosh. There's probably been several several occasions. I mean, one time, I guess, early on in my career, was just having to work all night.
Oh my goodness.
Literally all night.
Yeah.
We had a deadline. Sometimes these are arbitrary, who knows. This was in Paris. I didn't really know what I was doing that much anyway. I hadn't long been in the role. I was working with a couple of colleagues, and we stayed up. It happens a lot, like especially on some of these sort of project finance deals that I was working on, or asset finance deals I was working on. Yeah, you had to get things done for the client, and it just meant you had to stay up all night doing some really mundane work, especially as a junior. You're not doing anything glamorous. You are just doing the grunt work, changing
I agree. I think
documents or whatever.
I think that talking to a lot of different lawyers, that's something that I've really learned, and it's really different from my first perception of law. Like, for example, the first thing I learned about law, or kind of like what it's like to be lawyers, from the TV show Suits.
Yes.
And how, now that I talk to the lawyers, they tell me how you have to work all night, and they don't really show you that in Suits, and it's so different. So I think it's great that I kind of want to use this podcast to show people the reality of what working in law is.
Yes, it's not always glamorous. And in practice, and depending on the kind of work you do, it's also not always very good.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily adding value to the world.
Yeah.
And not sure, it depends on your values as well. Like some of the corporate transactions that you work on, or some of the financing deals you do. I think sometimes in the organization I'm working in right now, if we instruct external counsel, they get really excited and they're like, we'll do it for free because it's good work. Like, because I don't think they're always doing stuff that they think aligns with their values, but they're doing it for money. So it literally depends on which area you're working in as well. I didn't always feel proud of some of the work I was working on necessarily in early days. I was just like, well, what is
But
this?
It sounds like you've really grown, because I think now you do a lot of good work, kind of like climate, humanitarian side.
Yeah, that's deliberate. I've wanted to, like, that's why I've curated that in my journey. And I'm not saying it's all good, because who knows what's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
But I think you have to be very intentional about that, trying to make sure you go and work in spaces that you align with your values, and that won't always work out, but you can try. And
kind of now that we're ending, I think for my last two questions, one of them would be, what is the biggest lesson you wish a woman my age thinking about pursuing law should consider?
Biggest lesson?
Yeah. Or advice.
Yeah, I think don't close yourself off. Don't make decisions too early. Keep yourself open. Like, I've traversed like 5 different spaces within the law, and listen to look out for opportunities. Do what you're doing now. Talk to people who are older than you, who have experienced more. So this is great, and just trust in yourself that it will work out if you just keep going, and you sort of put your mind to it, you'll get there. I have very little doubt that you will succeed, in the space of law.
And kind of, this is a question I always like to end with because it's a bit of a fun one.
Okay.
What was your biggest year in billable hours? If you don't have to share if you don't want to, but...
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh.
I have zero idea.
Okay. Well...
I didn't pay attention to that.
That's great though. That's great that you didn't pay attention.
Yeah, no,
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I was never interested in private practice. I was like, more in-house. Get me in-house as quick as possible. So yeah, never paid attention. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think honestly that's a good thing that you weren't focused so much in the money side. You're more focused on doing what you wanted to do and what you felt was right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I never realised that until probably this conversation. Were other people able to answer that question quite easily?
I don't remember. Our last guest was Bella. I don't remember her answer, but I think she was.
She was able to.
I think so. But it's really interesting because right now, in my age, like in our school, we've been having a lot of career talks. And when I talk to other people my age, sometimes they don't really know what they want to do, but I just know that everyone is so focused on what do you get the most money out of. But I think that's so interesting that you just chose what you actually wanted to do. Like, that money wasn't a big factor for you. You wanted to travel, actually help people. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because like you can have all the money in the world and then never see your family, never see your kids. So that was never, like, I've never been interested in that. I was never going to be on the breadline because I'm a lawyer. Like, obviously I'll be able to get money and but it was about balance for me, and it still is. Like, I think the focus on money is interesting. It's natural to want to make sure that you have that. It depends on what your final goal is.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be a billionaire, so don't come to me to ask about if they want to achieve that. But I feel like having balance of having good relationships, enjoying my work, obviously having money, I feel like that makes me feel comfortable and where I am at the moment.
So as we end, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything, last advice that you want to give to our other viewers?
I think this is amazing. I think you should be so proud of yourself for taking this initiative.
Yeah.
I think it speaks so well that you're doing so much research and thinking thoroughly at this age about what you want to do and getting all the information and data. One thing I would say about the law is there was sorry to end on this note, but there was an article about AI taking over 67% of legal roles. Yeah. So, I mean, keep your options open. I'm sure that we will always need lawyers, but maybe not as many as we have today in the future. And keep your mind open to new spaces, right? Because nothing like this existed when I was your age. Like nothing. Like, there were no podcasts. I mean, we had Oprah Winfrey, who was doing the talk shows. Yeah. That's probably the equivalent of what we had, and maybe Larry King live on CNN or whatever. But there will be new spaces and maybe you can create them yourself. You know. So just keep being creative.
That's really funny because the other day I don't know what I was doing, but I think I was just researching about kind of the same thing because another lawyer was saying, but be careful because AI is coming to take all lawyers' jobs. So I was researching a bit about that. And I came across this one AI platform that was specialized for lawyers. And it was called Harvey AI, so kind of like Harvey Specter from Suits. And I thought that was kind of sad, but it was perfect. Because it was like, ask Harvey. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's AI is
It's coming.
a whole other platform. Like it's on another level. I use AI every day to help me with my work, right? So yeah, we'll see how that goes. On Suits, love it. Nothing to do with reality, as others have told you. I wish I could wear those clothes. Maybe if I were more focused on money, then maybe I would have. But yeah. I love the show. Love the show.
Those are my favorite shows.
And none of them look like Harvey Specter.
They look a little bit more like Louis Litt.
Sorry. That's my own limited experience. Yes, it was more of a Louis Litt show than a Harvey Specter show.
Hi everyone. So the last 3 minutes or 4 minutes of our actual podcast got interrupted or got ended, but I just wanted to thank Emmy so much for coming on the podcast today. I think I learned so much from her experiences and her lessons. Is there any last words you want to say?
Thank you so much for having me. I think you're doing an amazing thing here, and I think you should be proud of yourself because it's smart and courageous to go and speak to older people about this stuff, but I think you'll learn a lot, and I think it will really bode well for your future. So.
Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see you in our next episode. Thank you.
Bye.